Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining our webinar. We will begin in a few seconds' time. Dr. Rami, you may begin now.
Okay. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I know there are others who should be coming in to join us, but I thought we will start on time. I want to thank all of you for joining us on this webinar. And if you were here yesterday, you would have heard some introduction on or the background of this webinar. It was something that we had planned about 2 years ago, but we had to postpone it because of the MCO. And we're so glad that we're able to do this during this time with most of the speakers still with us and with additional speakers as well. So thank you for joining us. This is part of the 50th anniversary of the Faculty of Law, and we want to celebrate this 50th anniversary with a number of events, but this is one of them. And the Center for Legal Pluralism and Indigenous Law, together with Celeste, which is a Center for Ethics and Science and Technology and Law, bringing together the intersection of traditional knowledge and technology. At the Center for Legal Pluralism, we have over the years tried to bring up issues that relate to indigenous peoples, various issues, whether it is conservation or their or biodiversity, or their unique traditional knowledge, and we are glad that we are able to do this for this time. Yesterday we talked about how this has been done through or to one of the communities in Sarawak, and we also heard yesterday also about how adat or native law is being used by indigenous communities in their own conservation methods of or the tagal system, and how they manage their resources or their fish resources. And that's just one example of the use of traditional knowledge in conserving and in preserving the resources of indigenous communities. And today we will be listening to three speakers. The first one will be looking at the documentation of traditional knowledge itself, the methodology of documentation, and then we will be looking at two very practical papers on how this is done and why it is done. So our first speaker, Dr. Paul Kwek, is a former fellow at Biodiversity International, involved in traditional knowledge documentation methodology since 2000. In fact, I think Dr. Paul Kwek is one of the pioneers of doing this. I remember in the early years referring to him in terms of what was being done in documenting traditional knowledge when very few people were talking about it and looking at the importance of it. So he was instrumental in assisting Sarawak Biodiversity Center in setting up their TK documentation program, and many Sarawakians know that SBC, as they call it, has been doing some work with indigenous peoples in Sarawak. As Dr. Paul Kwek was saying, that this unique traditional knowledge may not always be there, and sometimes we take for granted that the knowledge will continue to remain. But it is eroding, and there is a loss of this knowledge, and we need to not only document it, but also perhaps to point the way as to how this can be done, and to create an awareness of this whole possibility of loss of this unique knowledge. Yeah? He will be talking about knowledge archaeology as well, which I hope that many of the community representatives will be able to catch on this, which is something that you can bring down and bring back to your communities. So Dr. Kwek's paper is entitled Technology Changes and Traditional Knowledge Documentation. Technology impacts both the medium of storage as well as the content of the traditional knowledge. Storage media technology innovations complements traditional knowledge documentation. As he will share with us, the challenges of traditional knowledge content is getting more intense with technology changes. We will see this in each of the presentations this afternoon. So I will give this time now for Dr. Paul Kwek to speak to us. I may also say that he, apart from having been a fellow at the International Biodiversity, he now volunteers with Yayasan Kajian, what is that? Yayasan
Pembangunan
Pembangunan Masyarakat, yeah, which is Foundation for Community Education, and a lot of the work that he does now is also with Orang Asli. So thank you for coming on board, Dr. Paul Kwek. I'll pass now the time to you. You have the next 40 minutes, and if there are any questions that you would like to ask, you can put it in the chat box, and we'll try to answer those questions later. Thank you. Pass the time now to you.
Okay, good afternoon. I will now move you over to my share screen so that I can do the slide presentation. All right, so I hope you all can see the share screen now. Huh? All right, I will just talk a little bit about on the work that I've done on documenting traditional business knowledge, and this has been sparked off from this particular cartoon. All right, you can just see here that the researchers goes into the different community day and night, and then he lives with a PhD, after he finished his studies. All right, whilst if you look at the background is where the knowledge distinct holder is still in the actually distinct village. Right, so I was actually saying that can we sort of make this process not one distance-sided, and that we can have TK distance studied, so that there is gain to the distance community. So this led me to the TK distance journal distance method, which this thing developed together with my friend with my colleague in China. All right, so this is the representation of how it was actually done. That is, say that when the scientists go and interact with the farmer, they will produce actually scientific paper, which only says that they will only thank farmer A. All right. So when the next scientist uses this particular paper, the mention of thank you to farmer A doesn't anymore exist. So you actually don't have that continuation. So what I've actually done is to try to use the same this method which the actually science is actually using to try to bring about this recognition, so that when the scientists go and interact with this farmer, he will first produce what I call actually farmer's paper, which is in the farmer's own language, right? And this is where the TK journal thing comes up in. And so when the scientist develop his own paper, he can then cite it. So we are talking about citation here. All right. So once he actually cite it, what it actually means is that the next person who actually uses this particular knowledge will also have to actually cite it, so that you can actually trace who has actually used it. All right, and then this will also mean that if there is a farmer's own language paper, then the farmers community will also be able to actually use it, because currently it's only for the scientists. All right, so we are trying to make sure that the people at the community will also be able to actually use it, which is also important. And with the citation, what will lead to is that we can merge both the actual knowledge system. So if one cites from this another, you can actually finally is that you can merge these two knowledge distinct system into to be protected under the actually same system. So that there is actually no need to create what it calls actually separate protection for the TK, but it should be part and this is parcel of any of the knowledge system. Right now, most of the time is that when we look at traditional knowledge, we are looking at oral transmission. All right, and we all know that this knowledge is actually embedded inside songs, poetry, dances, practices, protocols, and actually more. All right, now all of this requires four different components to keep this knowledge going. That is this knowledge holder. You need the recipient, you need the situation and time, and you need the material. I will actually discuss this in the next slide, which just shows you that when you have a missing this component in the knowledge transmission, the outcome can be very, very different. All right. So we look at the first column here. You will find that if you have the knowledge holder, and you have the people who are willing to actually listen and then actually use it, you have the distinct situation to actually apply it. But if you don't have this material, that means if you don't have this particular plant, this example, then it becomes this story. That means that we used to have this, which was used for this. That's it. All right. That means that this is story. But and then in this second one, if you don't have the distinct situation here means that this example is that if it is easier to go to the store to buy your actually this paracetamol, this Panadol, then to go to the then to go and actually prepare your actually this traditional this remedy. All right, then it becomes that particular this knowledge becomes not this needed. All right, same thing as if the actually this younger some people this prefer to actually buy the actually this modern printed color cloth, then your actually traditional dye cloth will also not be actually the actually this knowledge on the traditional dye cloth will also not be this needed, isn't it? Right now, if you don't have the this recipient, that means if all the young people goes to town and then no one is willing to actually learn about the traditional this knowledge, then you will find that it becomes threatened, right? And if you lose the knowledge this holder, that's it. Then you have a knowledge loss. All right. So it is without this, we will actually note that it is important to actually look at this and documenting it. So once you have this, you have this and documented, that means you would actually be able to actually ensure that it is not lost, and that even if it is threatened, it is actually still there. Right. Now, next one is that we look at now. Okay, now based on the last outcome, that it is a story, it's not needed, it's threatened, and it is lost. We can see how the actually technology now is able to help us. All right. So you find that with the distinct internet and storage things, you say, okay, if it is a distinct story, you can actually very well store it. All right. If it's not this thing needed, we also can just store it. It is threatened, we also can destroy it. But if it's lost, we won't be able to do anything. All right, then we come to artificial intelligence, which is what is this latest craze now. All right, so you have got it can use both all this, and it also provides you the actually possibility that if it is this thing threatened, you can possibly replicate the knowledge holder. If you know that Alexa, you've seen a lot of this advertisement about this Alexa. He's able to answer you these questions while you are driving. All right, so it is possible that you can replicate the knowledge holder if he's still there. All right, and then you can take this Alexa and go into the community this forest, and then it will actually tell you, okay, if you are here now on the right, you should see this plant, on the left you see this plant, then you can also ask them question, okay, what's the use of actually this plant? It can actually gives you the answer. So you see that technology can actually help us to actually keep the traditional knowledge alive. Now, on the part where it is lost, now if we can replicate the knowledge holder, it means that it is possible then to actually look at the actually thinking process behind that knowledge, and there may be a possibility to look at reconstructing what has been lost. All right, possibility. All right, so that leads us to what we call by knowledge archaeology. That means we try to reconstruct something that has been lost, but we actually know what it is. Of course, you must actually know where to actually start first, because if you have nothing to just start, then there's actually nothing to actually look back this into towards. Right. So this is how I actually look at technology impact, right, on the traditional design knowledge design systems. All right. So I always like to look at the design positive side. All right. Okay. Now, if you look at traditional design knowledge, design documenting it means that we can have a knowledge base for the K design economy. We always say, last time we used to talk about K design economy. Now maybe not, you actually don't hear so much about what this. All right, but so you can use it for your biotech work, for benefit sharing. But most important is that this knowledge base has to be maintained using a traditional education system, because you need to have the knowledge design holder up here, right? At the traditional design, not traditional design knowledge, and you also have to look at how this knowledge is going to change over what time, because knowledge is always this thing evolving. It is not something static. You cannot look at a knowledge design system as actually something fixed, static. No, it is always this evolving. It always adds in new what we call new design knowledge. So that actually means that the knowledge design holder has also to be updated from time to time, so that you can keep on updating the knowledge base. Right. So this traditional education design system is to maintain basically the knowledge design holder, because if you don't have the knowledge design holder, you actually cannot what you call keep that knowledge design evolving. So now this actually brings me to this example here. This is an example of a traditional education design curriculum, which I tried to develop with one of the design groups here. So I actually find that most important is that if you look at the design at the column for design botany, all right, for a child from up to the age of 12, that means design primary design education, he needs to learn at least 290 plants. All right, which may be more than what even our botany design graduates may actually know. All right, so for the child to be able to learn 290 plants, you need really some form of a traditional education system in actually place. Right. If you do not have, then it is very hard to actually maintain this. Even at the actually school, you actually won't be able to maintain 290 plants. And then there's also other things like handiwork craft and actually skills which they have to do, and then the music and actually design culture. So there is a lot of basic design knowledge that a child in the traditional design community has to cover. That is beside going to the normal school, which handles the actually the 3R. All right. So there is a lot of work actually that actually needs to be done at the community design level. Okay. Now, if you want to sustain the all right. Now, we can sustain the TK with design education, and we also know that technology can be very useful here. All right, but technology is only a tool. All right, the most important question we need to ask is, are we ready to allow this in TK to harness the technology? Because sometimes we are actually afraid that if we allow that, then we may lose it. But then you will actually find that for basic traditional design knowledge, design education, we will need to use technology to keep it going, or else because we don't have enough knowledge design holders. All right, and they are actually quickly what we call we are quickly losing them because of the age. All right. Now I will now take you towards some of the concern challenges. All right, in actually more graphic way. All right. Okay. Now we look at first concern is that people talk about protecting TK for the Dissident community. Every time we talk about this in TK, there's always this talk about protection. All right, now here is a group of the brown colored dots here or the red colored dots here are a bunch of DC villages, and then came all these scientists to the DC village, all these mortarboards here, and they will say that you need IPR to protect your valuable knowledge. So what comes to mind to the these villagers is that we now have a goose that lays these golden eggs. Right? Now, next thing is that they will actually tell them that after this sharing, there is a possibility that 1 in 10,000 plants will have a commercial value. All right, so now the goose has got less eggs now. All right, because it's not everything that you can commercialize. All right, now next thing is that it says that you need money to protect your rights. So in the end is that there is actually no more goose that lays the golden eggs, because they all went into the to the lawyers. All right, this is just an illustration. Do not get this upset for you from the law faculty or this. All right. Now, next thing is that the actual impact pathway with this technology. You have got TK inside the these villages, and you also have the education, research, and actually development infrastructures. All right, present. Now, what happens is that people talk about that IPR in terms of the TK, and then they always look for accessibility to actually this TK. Once you have accessibility, what will happen is that this research and actually this development part will be able then to get into these villages. You'll be able to document all the things which they want, and finally all this will end up in the TK University. That means to say that finally one of the possible setback is that if you want to study this in TK, you do not need to go to the TK this village. You just need to go to the TK this university. Now this is what happens also with, if you look at acupuncture. Acupuncture if you want to study, you used to go to this in China. But now, if you want to study this acupuncture, you go to this in Germany. Okay? So this is what happens when you have a strong education, research, and actually development this structure. It can really pull in the this knowledge and then process it and then put it outside this domain of the knowledge holders. All right. Now, next one is that we look at this negotiation here. All right. If you look at this one, this was from 2006. This is the negotiation between Peru and actually this US on this some trade issues. Now you can actually say the same thing now if you put them into the community and this academic or even the government. Then what you have is a community-led development that is possibly maybe they can always force you to actually do this development instead of really going to be a community-led development. All right, so these are the same challenges. Now on the other side, we must know that context matters in traditional knowledge. as without the context, TK is like a fish out of water. Now I can actually relate this because I actually used to talk to my great grandmother and to my in-laws grandmother before. That means that before just to share you how is it that it is without this context is that when I was about to get married, I actually asked my grandmother in-law to say that what are the different protocols that we need to have. So she said that she mentioned this, several things, but something which actually struck me was that she actually said that you need to light 2 lamps in the bedroom. So I was actually querying her, why do you need 2 lamps? Can it be electrical lamps? Then she says, the lamp, the lamp is to actually represent future distant generations. All right. And then she says you have to use kerosene. So I was saying that, is she out of this context? We have got this electrical lamps now. Why do you still need kerosene lamps? All right. And then I actually asked her, how does the lamp represents future distant generation? And then her only answer here is that you have to follow what the elder says. All right. This is when they are not able to actually explain. All right. So they don't have the distant context because they haven't asked their distant parents why. All right. Okay. So this is when it is out of distant context. It's without the actually distant context. But at the same time, technology also can confuse us with the different contexts it actually can use. Now, based on the previous example, is that I actually told her that since you cannot tell me why, I will actually tell you why. All right. So I actually told her that you have to look at this particular distant protocol based on the actually distant context. So I says that when they developed this, the distant society was actually probably very, very distant conservative, and actually those days they will have got wood and actually paper walls. That means walls that are made of wood as well as paper. So I says that by actually lighting 2 actually lamps there, the actually parents will be able to peep and see whether if the son is able to knows how to do it. So she actually laughed away. All right. So you see that I have introduced actually context which may be totally different, but it seems this is logical. All right. So this is one of the things that can happen. Right. So the actually last thing you want to know is that, do we see the traditional knowledge as the past, the present, or the distant future? Because if you see it as the past, then it is just some archival distant knowledge. The present, we just don't know is that can I apply it now? But if you think that it is for the distant future, then you will actually know that you can do a lot more with the traditional distant knowledge and with the distant technology. All right, so I will end that, say that the actually future holds interesting work on traditional distant knowledge with advances in actually distant technologies and within the boundary of challenges within and outside the distant community. All right, so thank you. If you have any questions, you please raise them. And if you need to contact me, you can always scan the QR code, and there's a reference that goes to the TK distant documentation work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Quick, for that. I think you raised this very valid issue as whether we look at traditional knowledge as something that is in the past, only something of the past. But as you say, we are looking at its position in the present, and that's an interesting way that you say that the future really holds interesting work on traditional knowledge. I don't know if there are any questions on this, but perhaps let me just ask one question as we wait for any questions from the floor. Because you talk about context, context matters, and I think that's really very important point for us. And in view of the fact that accessibility is very important, and the fact that traditional knowledge can be stored perhaps in a depository somewhere in the university, or where people can go for that. What is your own view on this? How much of this will we lose in terms of the contextual understanding of the traditional knowledge?
All right. For the contextual understanding, it only applies to the original this knowledge. That means to say that when you first document it, we will have to know how, or actually what this circumstances. All right, but subsequent this research and actually this development would have changed the so-called this context. Example is that you may have actually drug this traditional this preparation, right, which you use for a certain this disease. All right, now they may take that preparation and then maybe come up with the active ingredient. So that actually this knowledge changes because they have already isolate the active ingredients. So the actually traditional the actually original context does not apply. Let me say, you actually cannot say that you take this drug and you follow the original way of actually taking it does not apply this anymore. Right. So and then context, it is such that sometimes we actually says that this particular thing looks like this in a carrot. I mean, it actually doesn't seem to make actually sense because we took it out from the actually context where it is supposed to apply. All right, so this is something that will occur once you do this documentation, and it is something that we have to look at how to make sure that it is actually not, because it is just like when I was actually doing when I was doing editing for the traditional medicine, for the Chinese traditional medicine. They I mean, people claim that, oh, the Chinese traditional medicine has a cure for every disease. I was wondering where they came with this type of conclusion. So finally, I was doing the work. Then I actually found that, oh, it is because the word this in treatment, for the disease, they will usually use the word treated. All right, it's either treatment complete or treatment not complete. And if you translate that actually treatment word as actually cure, then you will actually think that it has a cure for almost everything, but it is actually not. It says that it has a treatment for everything, but some treatment are successful, some are actually not. That's I mean that's what it is. It is same as ancestor distant worship. They always says that, oh, it is for the Christians. It is not right to do ancestor distant worship. But then again, the word for actually this in worship or actually this in respect to the the elders, they use the actually same word. Right, and so if you're an outsider, you come in, you come and interpret it. It will all looks different. Right, so language itself is actually cannot be translated just as it is. So that's why when we document the traditional this knowledge in the farmer's own this language, you also can conserve the language lah. Right, it is not just the this knowledge, but the this language itself is actually conserved.
Yeah, I see how important it is therefore for the knowledge holder to speak, for us to take that language as they have used it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. I have one other question, but I think I'll go to a question that's been raised. Maramat Haja has raised this question. Since you were involved with the Sarawak Biodiversity Center, are there any traditional knowledge from the Sarawak Biodiversity Center that is ready to be manufactured for the global market? You were just following on. You were talking about.
Okay. It's fine. Is that all right? Now these things about that finding active ingredient and trying to commercialize it. It does takes a long time. It is not something that you can do it. Let's say, okay, I actually found this particular thing and I can straight away commercialize it. No, there's actually still a lot of things that has to be done. You need to do this research. You need to test it out. You need to see the acceptability of the consumer. So there is still a lot of other things that has to be done. So it is. So sometimes it's that community expects. That's why it is quite dangerous to go to a this community, and then it just says that okay, if you share it, we will be able to find something that can be commercialized, and you will become rich, right? And then after 10 years, nothing happens, then this community is going to come back and then actually ask you, okay, now you have found this active ingredient. Why am I still not rich? Right, but there is a lot of other things, right? So that sometimes when we talk to the community, you have to make sure that you don't oversimplify a lot of these things that is possible, or it is not as simple as actually that. It's just like tongkat ali, right? They say, okay, this is good. Everybody goes inside, and then you actually suddenly find that there is actually no more advertisement. It stops. Why? Because they found what they call plant steroid in it. Wow. Okay, so everything stops, because if you do not stop, if something happens to someone, they can always sue you. So it is not as straight this thing forward as actually saying that once you discover something, you can make the money. No, it's not that straightforward, because there's also still the thing about IPR issues and everything else. So it costs, just now my slide I just show you. All right. You may think that you have a lot of funds from the geese that lays the golden eggs, but in the end, you will actually find that it all went into IPR protection.
Yeah. Yeah, those are some of the issues that come with it, but acknowledging that it may take time and to be able to isolate those things. Is there any product at all that is being pushed or that people are testing at the moment? Do you know?
Yeah, I think they are getting these communities to there's actually one which they are using inside soap and inside this shampoo. All right, but that again, the actually issue is going to be marketing. How are you going how well can you push it out, all right, before this community, before the people outside accepts it. There are actually things going on, but the last time I heard that they actually had one which was quite this thing promising, and they had the different communities all growing it to actually harvest it, but still not on a commercial scale.
Yeah. Is that anything to do with perfumes and medicines and things like that?
It has to be. It is essential oil,
Essential
which
oil.
is
Yeah,
which
that's
is
right.
added inside soap, inside shampoos, and actually
Okay.
all of that. All right.
All right. Yeah, thank you. I was kicked out for a short while from this just now, so there's a little bit that I actually missed out. But you were talking about traditional education curriculum when I got back in, and I was just wondering, what is the possibility really of this kind of real education in our education system, of this kind of knowledge being put in,
Okay. I actually don't see how you can put this knowledge into our current education system, because if you put it in, it is out of this context. All right. I mean, this traditional curriculum, what you call, if you want to do it, it is going to be community based. That means each of this community will have their own curriculum, which is going to be different, because each of them has got different plants. They got different handiwork craft skills. They got different cultures. Is it? So it is not that you can put inside this national education system, but this has to be a traditional education system which is run by this community. And there are I've seen this example of this in Yunnan, in China, where the community runs this education for the tourist guide. That means if you want to be a tourist guide for this community, you have to go through this traditional education that is run by this community, and at the end you will get a sort of this certificate which you can then use to apply for this tourist guide license. Right. So it is possible. So if we have this traditional education system runs by this community, you can maintain the knowledge holder.
right?
Yeah.
So it has to now go back actually to the community.
Yes.
In fact, someone sent me something last night on indigenous-led education. So bringing it back to the community to be able to push that, I think, to teach their young ones on this education. Yeah. And so that's very interesting. Yeah. So, is there any other questions that people have on?
No, doctor, there are no questions at this time.
Okay, all right. So, if that is so, we want to thank Dr. Paul Kwek for sharing with us. And you can always, of course, contact him if you have any other questions on this. I think he's got a lot to share in terms of documenting this. I know in many communities we are in transition, where the elders, many of the elders are no longer there, and there are a lot of knowledge that we are losing because they're no longer there. But it is possible to use technology, as he said, and that's really a good point for the future. That's something, there is hope for us in that sense, that we can use AI to try and conserve and protect some of that knowledge. Yeah, with that, I thank you so very much, Dr. Paul Kwek, for coming on board to share with us
welcome.
knowledge. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And then from here we move on to the next speaker after this. Um, shall I go on, Raymond, to the next speaker?
Yeah, Mr. Maramat Taja.
Okay. Is Maramat is now is there with us? Yeah.
Hi.
Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for coming on board and to speak to us on this very topical but perhaps not very explored subject as yet. Yeah. Just a brief introduction. When we started to put this conference together about 2 years ago, and we thought that we needed something that is more practical to help perhaps communities or people who are looking at how traditional knowledge can really be useful, not just looking at the commercial side, but also not only to protect but also to help in terms of wealth management or wealth accumulation or conservation. And so we asked Mr. Maramat to come on board, and we're just so glad that he continued to agree to speak to us on this. Maramat Taja currently works as an engineering manager with a local engineering firm. He had previously worked for Shell for 26 years in various positions in engineering, in ICT, and in project management until 2016. Now, he is trained in engineering at the University of Evansville in the USA with a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering and a Bachelor of Science in Computer Engineering. So he set up this community digital mapping initiative with which is CDMI, with some friends in 2017, and with the objective to provide a platform for indigenous peoples across the globe to document their heritage, land, assets which has not been granted proper legal recognition by the authorities for various reasons. And so he will be speaking to us on demarcation records of heritage lands, on the fact that demarcation records of heritage lands belonging to indigenous peoples, and that includes natives both in Sabah and Sarawak, I think, and in Peninsula, where these narratives are according to their own traditions and their old traditions in accordance with their local practices, as Dr. Paul Quek has already mentioned just now. All this knowledge may be in their stories, and generally when it comes to land, the method is by landforms, vegetation, by trees, rivers, and hills. And the evidential value of the oral tradition is rapidly declining and may eventually be lost with the passing of the present generation. So Mr. Maramat speaks to us of the situation in Sarawak, where much of the hinterland has yet to be surveyed and issued land titles, although it must be said that there are efforts underway to try and do this. But we know that without legal title, the land assets are not only at risk from land predators, but will not be recognized as an economic asset that will appreciate in value over time. Neither would families be able to harness the value of the land for accumulation of wealth. Yeah. So in addition, we see overlapping claims between native landowners, between them and investing companies that come onto the land, which often cause serious legal contests. As you know, there are many cases that are in the courts at the moment with those contexts. And so, while there are government efforts to conduct cadastral survey, and that is ongoing, it remains unclear how when all those 1 million individual parcels will be completely surveyed. And as we know, the cadastral survey will require licensed and professional surveyors, which is very intensive and costly in terms of the needed manpower. Yeah, so Mr. Maramat and his associates using the CDMI or Community Digital Mapping Initiative, using GPS coordinates on the land and GIS software and all that, and he will speak to us on this, and perhaps for us to understand a bit more on how this is being done. Yeah. All right. So the we will. I think I'll pass this time now to Maramat to speak to us on the CDMI long-term value proposition, and speaking in about the community digital mapping, describing perhaps the present system and the long-term vision or evolution from land documentation to e-commerce. Similar to what Mr. Paul Quek was saying, we need to see where this is bringing us as well. Yeah. So I'll pass the time now to you, Mr. Maramat. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Raymond Bolan, for this for the introduction and the opportunity. And this is a long-standing issue in Sarawak. So today, me and my associates, I see Ben is also joining. So we have been looking at these things for a long time, actually, and we did form a small company to try to solve this is from purely engineering point of view, from technology point of view, to see whether we can alleviate the pain points, so to speak, in terms of the economic regrets arising from our failure to give legal recognition to this land ownership. So I was very passionate about it. So we started it, and this is a bit of the paper will be something that we have been presenting many times in Sarawak. We have had workshops in all over the place until the COVID. But this is the first time that I'm kind of presenting it to a larger audience. So I've been looking forward to getting a feedback, exchange of ideas with people from Sabah, as well as indigenous people from Malaya. Okay, so I'm going to share my my screen. I won't be very long. I try to keep this light and happy because this is a long afternoon already. Let me see if I get it there. This is the one. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes, I think we can. Yeah.
You can, huh? All right, okay. So, all right, the title of the paper is Community Land Use Mapping Using this Geographical Information System, the GIS. So, I have to, make a caveat that I'm not the expert on GIS. My colleague Ben is, and this is a very interesting technology that's becoming more easily accessible with the open source foundation. Used to be that this kind of software will cost you like 3 million ringgit. So there's no way indigenous people can exploit it. But with the open source foundation, then we realized that the cost of the technology is more manageable now. So that's why we are confident that, and also we think that we can master it and we can apply it to the problem that we just discussed just now. Okay, so I am kind of representing the community digital mapping initiative. It is a company, so this a bit of that is not purely academic thing. That this is I have to address that question because we were early on thinking to whether to set up an NGO or to set up this private company with which to try to help everybody, all the stakeholders, to try to solve this problem. And we decided that it's better for us to be neutral from the all of the political contestation, but try to solve problems from a technocratic point of view, from a technology and technical point of view. Yeah. All right. Let's move. I have just about 20 slides, so I will move quite fast. But you're prepared to stop me any time that there is unclarity or something. Okay, fine. All right, so it's basically split into 4 parts. The introduction, we try to cover all the bases so that audience, both who are joining in and those who might be watching this later on, understand the basics of all the things that we discussed. So we look at the introduction, a few slides covering the introduction, and then we go on straight to the challenges based on this 3 or 4 years of experience that we had. And then we also see these opportunities as how this can be even used to apply in other aspects besides the documenting the land demarcation. And then the last bit, I just quote the page, basically try to invite all the stakeholders to support us morally, or or with materially, or be volunteers or teaching people how to do this. All right, so this the picture on the right is just more for decoration purpose, but this is the kind of thing that we do. And in this particular case, we help the community to subdivide their communal land using the technology, so that they don't have to go to very expensive method to do that, and be able to have confidence in how it's divided without stringing strings across to try to measure whether each person get 3 acres or that person get 2.5 acres, that kind of thing. All right. So introduction. I think I've said quite a lot up front, but let's see how this goes. So I'm going to kind of frame it like this, in case there's some people who still not clear about what this paper is all about, and what CDMI PLT or LP is all about, and what this initiative is all about. So in this long wordy statement, which says this application of GIS modeling for documenting the indigenous people's land demarcation, that's the very first objective. So we don't want to disguise it as something else. And then to effect the community sanction of land property ownership in digital format. Yeah, because culturally or by the other, these people are living in this longhouse or kampung. They are already applying community sanction to the ownership of the land, but it's only known by them in that small small areas. So if we put it in digital format, first thing you preserve it, and second thing you make it visible to people outside the community itself, and that has some intrinsic value that I can touch on a little bit. And then also to create economic value from the initiative by creating a digital marketplace for miles of rural areas, which are in the digital darkness at this time. So I call it digital darkness because it's not seen by Google Map. So if I ask Google how to go to my long house in Sungai Jikang, Julau, from Miri, it will not be able to find it. So that means we are in the digital darkness, and that unfortunately is what we experience in the rest much of Sarawak, except in major town. So if you ask Google Map to find a way to Dr. Rami long house, you'll be lost. And this is something is quite unfortunate because if we look at it, there is tremendous economic value to be seen digitally, to be known by the outside world or by your next door neighbor. What you have in your land, what the asset you have, and make it visible, and where you are, where your coordinate is in the world. So then we says, this is a simple work. It's like you're taking your point of interest for purpose of attracting tourists, also documenting your riverine and the creeks and the stream. Because if you look at the national map for the riverine system, only those rivers that are used for transportation will appear on the map. But there are also many small streams that can be very attractive, also that can affect the quality of the environment will not be seen. And there's a lot of work to try to document them, to put them on the map. So that's why our concept, besides stating the word TDMI, we see that the only sensible way forward is to do crowdsourcing, just like what you do with Facebook. And but in doing so, you try to make value for people who contribute to that community knowledge, to that community visibility, so to speak. So we don't see this Google will go anytime to all the to all the rural areas because there is no economic incentive for them. But we look at the technology has a lot of promise that we can do if we work together and. This with the emergence of this GIS, we have seen even advanced communities in the West, even doing it in the urban communities, not only in rural, to have their own private map that either they use it for their own or they allow others to see. So this is something that we're kind of passionate to apply for our specific case of this native land. All right, so let's go to the coordinate. So this is all about Sarawak for the moment, even though we say that the problems from our studies is actually all over the world. You see that in Indonesia, you see that I got people contacting me from the Philippines even. So this is not an isolated case where we have these indigenous people whose land is not yet given that birth certificate to show that it's a bona fide piece of land and that you are the owner, and therefore that it can be monetized on the market and that you will appreciate by 10% in over 10 years or something. So that's is this common problem. So I really show this picture of Sarawak to show the size of this state. It's really huge, 124,450 square kilometers. Now think about this. By some estimate, about 25 to 30% of that land is native land. If you think like an economist, you put a value on that. There's a lot of value. And if we apply technology to make that, just by virtue of putting it on the map and people know where is Maramat's land, that value is multiplied by 2% or 5%. Compared to when it's all in the dark, nobody knows where is Maramat's land is on the Jikang. Yeah. So this is an opportunity that I feel passionate about.
we may have overlooked. All right, so let's go to the next. And then if you look at this, it looks like a lot of people, 62% are Dayak, but Sarawak is such a big state, and we have only like 3 million population, so we have large piece of land. Okay, so that is a valuable property that the public can do something about it. So I'm going to touch on this some of the words that may be not familiar with audience who join this webinar or who will see this later on in the streaming. So yeah, because this is outside Sarawak, I have to mention this Dayak people, the indigenous people of Sarawak. We have, I think, based on the latest integration ordinance, there are about 31 tribes. So these Dayak people have the NCR land, it's called Native Customary Right Land, and it was given a name by virtue of the modern law creating something in 1958. So how much of it is really following that or not? That's another topic that can be discussed. And then we use the word CDMI, Community Digital Mapping Initiative. So we say this is community work. So it won't work if me and Ben and my associates, a small little company, try to invite all these landowners, try to mobilize people to do it. But if there's no response, we not get anywhere. But our role here is to create a platform that will be easy to use, that will be very, very cost effective, and it just depends on the will whether you want to do it or not. And then there's the company CDMI LLP, Limited Liability Partnership. This is private company. So I keep mentioning that we are private. We are not doing this to be in somebody's so there's no politic behind it. It's just an honest, because I'm a Dayak, I'm an Iban, I have the same problem. That unless I do this, if I die in the next whatever years, nobody knows where my father's land is. So it's that serious, and I think that's is true for most Dayak people. They don't care to admit it. And then this for the audience who are not Sarakian, so this is something for the Sarawak Land Code. I think it's like also in Malaya you have Tanah Rizab Melayu. So that's the code, that's the law behind it, which I won't get into. I'm not a lawyer. And then the technology that we mentioned, geographic information system. So, like I said,
Rahmat, can you come a bit nearer? Maybe your voice is not
Breaking. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, that's better. Yeah, thank you.
All right. So there's a GIS. We just touch about the technology. The web GIS is the GIS which is where you make available the information about your land assets and everything inside it on the web. It's a radical view, because what I notice in the many countries and also in Sarawak also, they don't really want to broadcast and show whose land is on the web. So for some reason, there's confidentiality there. When we're thinking that the opposite should be true, why not publish it just like the way you publish Facebook, and tell people where your land is, how far away is it from the nearest road, is there a river nearby, and from there people can quickly do an actuarial science kind of estimate, and be willing to join venture with you or lease the land or even buy that from you. So there's really no reason to tapok or hide it somewhere. So this is something that in my workshop I come across many times as well. So this mindset change that we have to do there. Longhouse, yeah, this is for people who are not in Sarawak should know about this. there are 5,000 plus longhouse. Each longhouse can have between 20 to even 80 doors. And each family will have at least 4 or 5 parcels. I have known people who have 10 parcels of land. And each parcel will be about really plant 5 or 10 acres at one time. So you plant one parcel and you go to the next, and then you go to the next the following year, and that's why it's about average is about 4 acres. A lot of land. Bottom line, that's the message. And then in discussing about technology, we always use the word geotagging. Geotagging, what does it mean? So it means it's very simple. You use your phone to tell people where's the location of your, your hut, your bamboo, your durian tree. So it's very, very easy to geotag it, and then we want to capture information. So for the landowner, it's even very useful for government as well, because when we engage with government, there's a question was asked, where most? Nobody knows. So if you want to invite investor to to make Musang King this ice cream factory, you want to find where's the best place to locate it. But if you don't know, you don't have the information. So it's very difficult very expensive to do it through the government because it requires a lot of manpower, and the only people who know about your land is you yourself. And this is the reason why we invite people to not be afraid to publish about publish their property, the native land property, and also the title land if they want to. GPS, okay, this is a global positioning system. So it used to be not so accurate, but now anybody who has used Grab or used Uber will not know that, if Uber can find you, surely you can find the demarcation of the land between you and the neighbor. So it can't be all that complicated. And then I think actually we have to mention the difference between cadastral surveying and this community surveying. What we are proposing is community surveying. So let the community do their own map, but we make it available as a global database that people can see. The service for this community survey, because you use a handphone or you buy this Garmin, the GPS phone that you put in your car, you have an accuracy of plus or minus 4 meters, type typical. Whereas if you this cadastral survey, which the government use, it will be could be plus or minus 5 centimeter. So the question I always ask is, why do we need to have an ancient land to be surveyed to the plus or minus 5 centimeter? That's not how our adapt do the demarcation. We demarcate between between this palm tree. It can be or the entire river as our demarcation. We don't need plus or minus 5 centimeter. Yeah, so that's the thing that maybe people have not discussed it with the professionals or with the regulatory authorities to see whether we can do the community survey first, and then by all means do the cadastral survey later on, follow up after that, instead of leaving it in the Google darkness where nobody knows whose land it is or around the long house. Okay, so that leads to me on this little dilemma. I won't go into too much detail into it. I did mention that the land mass is huge, 124,000 kilometers square, and if I just put 21% of that is NCR, there's a lot of land, and of this, nobody really know how many percent has been surveyed. I try to look for statistics. I cannot confirm what statistics are because they are confidential. So I cannot find the total number of parcels that has been. What we see online was that land that are near the town or near the school or near the clinic or near some kind of development will have
will be surveyed and given a title. But 2 or 3 kilometers outside the town is all Google darkness. You will be able to see it. So if you are not, if you don't have this land deed or land title, what you tend to lose is not only the fact that you may be at risk of having predator grabbing your land in the future. The predator can be anybody, could be your uncle, or it could be the big companies. But the fact that the land will have the same value 10 years from now, that is that is fact. Because if you study the history of the Black American, the reason why they really screw up because they cannot own properties. And we, if we don't have this land properly given title, then it's not a property. It's not like a condo or a piece of real estate that you have in town. So it will not appreciate. Yeah, because even if it appreciate, you are not guaranteed to be able to claim the land as yours. All right. To me, that is a huge economic regret. People don't look at it that way, and we think that need urgent response to have resolved this. I mean, 5 decades of incomplete land title. That's really not good. It's really not good. This is wasted. Then we look at it. There are 5,000 long house and kampongs. Yeah, it's very simple. It's quite astonishing. If I want to find 2 or 3 long house on Google Map, I'll be lucky to find 1 or 2 out of 5,000. So, but this thing is something we can do, and this is maybe something that we can exploit as a tourism site, for example. We may have some long house that is completely off grid, and then if we can show on the map where the location is, how to get there, and where using this river or using this logging road, that asset can be exploited. People can make money from that. But now we are in that digital darkness. We can't get people to do the simple tagging of where the location of this 5,000 long house. I know a few that has been gazetted. I know around Miri, but the not are simply not there. Then, this is regarding land use. Which district is planted the most of this? We don't know. And I'm not trying to be too, but if you ask this government, they also don't know. We talk about it. This is some problem that needs a solution. Whereas other country like Taiwan, they have all this land use online. You know exactly where you can get the best rice, for example. You know where they plant why land are reserved for your food security. But we don't have it yet. So some advanced country they know which land is fertile, what kind of chemical composition it has. They've done the soil survey, put it online. So then investors will know whether it's a good place to plant pineapple, for example. And then the blue one that is probably the one that concerns me the most. How does the individual know the individual and communal land demarcation? Not my oral history at the moment. My oral history, my father is 85 years old.
So if he's gone, I think the children wouldn't know. And it's very hard to take all people to the land and try to determine where is your land demarcation between yours and and other people in the longhouse, that kind of thing. So this is really require urgent solution, and I can really appreciate what the difficulties that the government might have. But I think we should not be taking it lying down because the technology is there. It's not too expensive. With a bit of effort, and if you can brave the heat and the sweat and the bushes, this can be done. I have done mine. I have done 2 of my parcel. So I have that properly recorded using GPS coordinates. So I don't use the old folks way of saying that, oh yeah, the boundary identification is using the durian tree or using this, which can die over time. So you can't use that vegetation anymore. So you want to put a mark in digital format. Because the GPS coordinate will never go anywhere. Whatever GPS technology comes in the future, that will still be valid. Okay, and then use logging rod for ecotourism. If anybody have seen our map, whether in UPEM or whether in land survey, there's a lot of logging rod, but they are unmarked. Why not? There are people who want to use the four wheel. They might want to travel along this logging road. I know a lot of this logging road going to Belaga to Kuala Baram there, to Baram, Ulu Baram, but they're not marked. So maybe it should be marked. And it's not difficult to do it with this technology. Just somebody who's willing to take the record, put it on their pickup, and record the journey when they go from Miri to Barrio, and then we can capture that route. So we can put that on the map. All right. So next slide. All right. That's just to show that we are a registered company proper. And that our forte is to do our intention to do crowdsourcing of GIS model for NCR and rural land. So we started. This was registered 2018. We started 2017. All right, GIS model. I keep mentioning the word, but if you Google it, this is what GIS model means. All it means is that you have a piece of land where you stand, properly demarcated, and then you can have multiple layers to describing what it is. On that piece of land where you stand, be it 1 acre or 10 acre or 100 acre, you can have multiple models. And this will be now, so you have the flexibility to put emphasis to to pick up on where those indigenous all the traditional knowledge about these herbs that can be used can be geotagging, and they will occupy a specific layer inside here. So we in our CDMI we are envisioning like 7 layers. So that a 1 acre piece of land has actually can contain a lot of information that you can store, and then you can make it available online. So it just to put the right model inside there, and then you have a very rich 3D model of the environment, especially. Okay. All right. So when you talk about the technology, so I said it's very simple. I mean, of course, this everybody know what GPS is. Everybody know what the mobile phone is. Everybody know what this GPS equipment is. But the only thing that require very expert skill will be software like GIS software. And besides the GIS software, we need this geospatial database nowadays, where you can store very rich type of information matching the GIS model, so that it can be easily searched just like Google, and people can write program. If you are sitting in somewhere in Sungai Jikang and you want to find a durian tree, it should be able to tell you just like what Google does. If you're looking for a coffee within 1 kilometer of where you are. So that's the whole idea about this GIS software that we think we should what they call that we should exploit. All right. So now, just want to quickly break pace. So I want to show where we are, what we have in our system at the moment. So anybody who want to see our system online, they can go to this. I don't know whether this is already online or not. Let me see. Right. So I think it's, just to show the practical aspect of it, and we show the native parser. So quite a number of people, you don't see it because I haven't zoomed in, who have registered their parser with us. So I'm just going to pick one parser just to show how it would look like. Somebody near. Right, maybe I can search. So a parcel would be shown on the map like that. I want to show another parcel. So for every parcel, we document what is on the land. So you can, of course, we want to know who's the landowner, what is the size, 2.93 hectare, what is the local name for that parcel, and what is the village, what district is it in. But beyond that, we store the documentation in Dropbox. We install these video images that you take on the ground to show what your parcel looks like. Yeah, so we can have Facebook links, all other media links. So this becomes a permanent record of the surveying activity that they have done on the land. So while we don't have all this super accuracy, so we have a rich documentation about who owns the land, what is the history of that land. We have this video affidavit about the owner of the land, what they used the land for in 1960s, 1970s, or in 1958, for example. So I'll stop that. All right, maybe just quickly do 2 minutes doing this. So all you need is a handphone, and in this case Android. So we don't want people to have to buy this GPS coordinate because they cost you at least 4 ringgit to 2,000. So with the smartphone, if you already have it, then you're ready to document your land. Yep. So they will stop at every pack and explain. All right. So I stop that there. So I'm going to go back to the presentation. All right, now the challenges. So it's not hunky-dory. So we like all new things. We're going to have problems. So I'm just kind of plotting it out. So the question that people always ask from the general public is it recognized by the government? So I cannot say no. I know it's we're not against the law, but for documenting your own land. So, but do they recognize at this point in time? I think they don't. So they only recognize this land that has been surveyed by authorized surveyor by the land and survey. So the community surveying is just for the community. So, but if we think about it, if you are a Iban community and you live in a long house, you know each other's land. You give sanction to it. Your rumah knows your land, the nearby landowner knows your land. So isn't that good enough for you to document it, you know? And then how do you, well, that's the rhetorical question there. How do you prove that yes, it's your land? So there's a departure between the adat and the law. The law wants evidence. The adat, it says, if my rumah say is mine, it should be mine. But Dr. Rami knows this more than I do. But in the court of law, they want evidence. And that's why this evidence we're going to lose. It won't take very long. In another 20 years or so, when I'm too old to speak, there's no what evidence do we have to I can give if my cucu have to stand in court and try to tell people that's the piece of land in Sungai Jikang belongs to them. So we says people in my longhouse is my witness. So we have this community thing. We have the sense. We have probably a bit of complacent there. Because when you think that your neighbor is not going to grab your land, you are complacent. You say it's good, right? But there could be a problem in the future if there's a road passing by and the land price goes at 200% or 400%. There'll be vultures, yeah? Can you prove it good as your land? I just mentioned that. And then we says, we let the government decide. A bit that's you go into the secular thing. Can the technology be trusted? I use the word grab lah, as good as grab. So that's a quick tag on the kind of I use this as our dilemma as people try to move this thing forward. And there's the thing about the generation gap, and I think I already mentioned the true change, the time bomb, when the present generation is no longer around. But the generation gap is you have the other generation who has this traditional knowledge, and then you have the young who are tech savvy. So the old ones doesn't know how to use smartphone, but the young ones who knows it doesn't know the demarcation. So you have this issue because the young fellas are part of that rural urban migration. So a lot of longhouse are basically empty of young people. So that is a serious challenge for us because they are running away from the land, and the people who are left there will have a hard time trying to use this technology that we are proposing, and probably even be cynical about it. And then that's why we have this thing, the indigenous method or know-how of land demarcation using all this point of interest are slowly being lost. So my children, my grandchildren will have no idea what this that is all about. Next, people often ask me, that's why I brought this up, what is the difference between the cadastral survey, which is the standard that used by the land and survey in Sarawak, and what's obviously that the one in the cadastral survey is very expensive, as I mentioned at the outset. And that's why even if every year you're getting like 20 or 25 million from federal government to do this survey, I cannot imagine when we get to survey every single piece of parcel. So using the base estimate of 5,000 plus long house and 4 acres, 4 parcel per family, this kind of thing, there's it's close to about 100,000 or 1 million parcel out there. And a fraction of that has been given title, but many are not. So even if you do your perimeter survey, the question is with so much manpower that will be required to do it, and with the sophisticated equipment that you need, and we need all the professional surveyors to do the job. And that's why
I would tell people that hey, let's not just wait and sitting down. We can do something about it. You can use any expensive system. You can use a smartphone. But the key thing here is you'll be crowdsourced, so it doesn't require too much manpower from the government agencies or from the state government, provided the indigenous people themselves are willing to do the job, to be party to the effort. In terms of accuracy, yeah, it's less accurate, but it's no different than the current other practice. We're not having plus or minus 5 centimeter of accuracy to show demarcation of our land. You need to be a smartphone user. So if you know how to use Facebook, that is our vision, then you should be able to do it. And we prove that it can be done. So we have, I think, 100 plus users. Many of them actually do using, they have to, they can see my YouTube video and learn from it and self-taught can do it. Yeah, learn on how to do, or they can hire somebody to do it for them. Somebody who is able-bodied and has the technical skill. And lastly, that's why I always mention is community sanction. If we cannot get the government for their own reason cannot recognize it, then if the community recognize it, that is good enough for me. So rather than not having any system at all, relying on the memories of people. I'm almost finished. This another challenge is, of course, this is it sounds simple. I make it sound simple, but to put this technology together, there's no ready-made solution. I cannot go to the market and say I want to buy the software and yeah, it's ready to use. So we have to stitch many things together to make it happen. Apparently, I don't know. Maybe other people in other parts of the world doesn't have the same, challenge and opportunity as the indigenous people in Sarawak, because the market hasn't come with any solution. So we are having that pioneer headache, trying to put things together using this IT skill to put an end-to-end solution for it. There's no economic pool, so I have to admit that. So people say, well, I do the survey, I put it in the system, make it online, then what? So it's only a belief that, to my mind, once we put it like that, then it's visible. Then it naturally should have a higher value than those land that are unseen and in this Google darkness. And then the community sanction basis for the community map, it requires critical mass. So if in the longhouse you have 80 door and only 1 or 2 people are using it, then it doesn't really, there's no critical mass. But if I have 1 longhouse, I made a proposal to one per rumah. I'm willing to do it for free, register it for free in our system, do the training for free, because I want to see the critical mass happens, because there are many things I can do. Once they register all the land or longhouse, I can help them to put up a marketplace there, so that one door can sell 2x per week. But if you think about 80 doors, there's a lot of production there. So you can create a brand out of that and put them on the map so that customers can order from them. That kind of thing. Those are very simple things to do. Any young chap knows how to create a web. I tried myself. So it's not rocket science to do that. But you need to have this whole thing properly profiled, so that you can put it on the map as even one map for them only, and register them in Google, and then and then it appear in people's search. Yeah, and depending on what your orientation is, if you want to go tourism, then you make sure that you register in tourism. And then, technology is relatively new. Like I said, there's no best practice to learn from in terms of the design. So it took some time for us to figure out, to do the integration. Target users are not yet empowered enough to trust in a community-driven solution. Again, I think this a propensity to only trust what the government says and not what private sector says. So say, can we? Why don't we document this land, put it online? You have a copy, hard copy, and I have it online copy. Those kind of thing. There's it takes a while to gain the trust that we have no nefarious intention to do it. We just want to create a platform for people to be part of this initiative. So that is probably the only political thing I mentioned. The last one, I think we kind of lackluster support by political and native leaders themselves. I've approached a few, but maybe I should do more. But I think the vision is probably not really understood yet, and that's why I'm very thankful that I'm given this opportunity to make our case in the program. Hopefully,
the people understand that we mean well, that the technology has its potential, and we can do something for the community in Sarawak, especially the indigenous people. And I think not much left. I will go fast. I think I'm my time almost up. So in terms of the opportunities, so you can identify land use and display transparently what we have. Then the other one here is yeah, probably we can accelerate the survey of our native land, which has not been fully surveyed for the last 5 or 6 decades. And then we preserve the oral history that until such time we get the official title, land title. So this, I think this would help accelerate the survey for individual title within the Section 6 perimeter survey. At the very least, it will prevent all the friction that can occur when the land surveyor comes to the place and there's overlapping claim and there's heated argument, and then those boys have to go back. So, but if you solve it within a community and using the wisdom of the native leaders, and you put technology, what we experience is that sometimes people tend to exaggerate the size of the overlapping when it's only like 0.1 acre, for example, and then we tell them, look, if you put this on the market, this is nothing. There's not no ground to fight with each other, to fight with your within your community. So that's where technology can help if people are willing to give it a chance. Yeah, I mentioned that for each kampung you can do the grouping properly. Once you do a profiling of what they have on the land, what they cultivate, those kind of thing, and then you can aggregate it and then serve it as a farm direct. So now the market comes to you. You don't have to look for the market. So own it. And then we think that in the future, maybe this knowing where your food comes from, there's a premium in knowing the location. And then you can, you as owner of the product, you can put up a higher premium for it. Right, so this one is related to typical of NCR land. They're all very small parcels, 4 acres, 6 acres, and they're not contiguous. So if an investor want to use 100 acre, for example, not contiguous. So if, for example, in this picture, you can see a long house, and then every 4 acres, 5 acres around it, and people want to work with the community to develop one whole section, they know who to call. That's a lot easier rather than now. It's like I said, this is a Google Darkness here. All you see is the green color. So, and if you try to interrogate Lasis, for example, you probably won't find land parcel around here. Yeah, it's all NCR. All right, so there's potential for tourism. I think I did mention that. using this backdrop of this rumah unit photo near Bekenu, which I think Ben took with the drone. So the whole idea is again, if we can remove this digital Google Map darkness and make full documentation, geotagging, all that's interesting around here, then we will probably have more tourism product. Just like Thailand, they can exploit every single clear water into a tourism spot.
Yeah, few more minutes, Muhammad.
All right, so I'm almost done. There's something about about this environmental stewardship and the page. Last one, the page. So to the lawmakers, we're hoping that they probably can look at this, the opportunity to use community mapping. I don't know whether any law need to be what they call it, to be revised. But as long as they don't object or they encourage their constituency, then I think that things can take off, because it's like I said, it's not rocket science. It's just the encouragement that it's not there. And then to the economists, I think that's turning our NCR into proper asset. If we cannot get it tighter, at least by doing like this, it'll be interesting if a paper can be written about it, because coming from me, I think it probably people wouldn't give it much weight. But if the economists can look at the potential just by visualizing our NCR land, that the land value can increase by 1%. That's every year or every 5 years. There's a lot of economic losses if you don't do it. And native leaders, so a lot of these people. So we're trying to take this idea across, and at every opportunity. Used to be that we do a workshop, a physical workshop, face to face. But the last 2 years we can't do much, so things kind of ground to a halt. So that's with that. I think that's all I have. And if anybody want to visit our website, they can HTTP to that website, and then also can email me. So I'm ready for Q&A. Probably not much time left.
Yeah. Right. Thank you, Chief Maramat, for sharing that with us. We may have just a short time for just if there's any question, maybe 1 or 2 questions. But as we have heard previously, maps have been the domain of governments, and we're beginning to see that it is something that is actually can be reached or can be used by communities themselves. And of course, as Muhammad has mentioned, the record of demarcation according to the communities themselves and the native land owners who come up with their own evidence of where their lands are. I mean, this can work hand in hand with some other efforts that are being done by the state, I think, to roll out maps of the community. And I think one of the points that you made about evidence, when these things come to the court, or where there is a need, where there is any tension, or where there is where you need to determine the rights, having evidence is better than not having evidence. In fact, when we look at one of the first cases, on the case of Nor Nyawai, what was used was a community map, because that was the best evidence that was available then. So I think it's something that we can really think about, talking about community sanctioned land property, putting it into some kind of digital format, and to give it visibility to the outside world or to the authorities. Then of course the question that you raised, would it be recognized? I said we have to really look at it as something that works hand in hand. I think that will perhaps help towards the recognition. And I like the phrase that you used where you talk about digital darkness. In this age where there is technology, where we're looking at rights or land rights, and where technology is really very much used, it is interesting that we try to wipe out that digital darkness. Yeah. So I don't know whether there's any other questions that people will have. Thank you for that. I think the website which you have put in, so people can look at the website more. There is also Ben has put in the HTTP. What is that? cdmigis.com, where you can look at more information about what they are doing. And it's interesting that you're talking about this as a social enterprise, which will try to help the indigenous peoples on the ground. And this is not just a local problem. I think indigenous peoples the world over have got this problem. Any questions? Um, any questions at all from the floor? Otherwise, I think, Muhammad, you have explained things fairly well and everybody follows what you are saying. But of course, we can always look at the information again. I appreciate that people who are with us from the beginning have stayed on, and I thank you for staying on. And I know there are at least three major webinars that are going on at the moment on policies, and very important webinars, including one by Ideas. And our convocation is going on at the same time as well now. So many things are happening, but we thank you for those of you who have remained with us. And please, as we say thank you together to Muhammad for this, join me in just thanking him and for being with us this afternoon. Thank you again for spending this time.
All right. Thanks all.
Yeah. All right. So with that, we close that session and we move on to the next one. I don't think we will have a break. Let's just go on to the next one so we can finish on time. And we are talking again about another detail of community mapping. And this time we hear from Sabah, from Adrian Banila Simbang. He's not a stranger to many of us. We hear him speaking. Adrian is an indigenous activist for the last 20 years. He's got experience in working to improve the livelihoods of rural communities. A self-taught innovator, not only has he installed micro hydro systems in many indigenous villages, and that includes my own village in Barre Asal, which he had done some years ago before we had the electricity. He had also trained community groups in resource management and customary rights protection. Adrian is the technical advisor to JOAS, which is Jaringan Orang Asal se-Malaysia. He was its past founder and president. I came to know of Adrian Lasimbang's work during the Suhakam National Inquiry on Indigenous Lands in 2010. It was Adrian who trained many of the youths to do their community mapping, and in fact produced many of the maps that were used in the national inquiry. I worked together with him during that period, and perhaps I'll mention also that Adrian was a former senator. for a term, but he now continues to do his work among communities. And he's a founder of Tonibung, a social enterprise that promotes renewable energy and appropriate technologies, and both in Sabah, and providing youths from rural areas training in renewable energy technologies, and conducts research and development on appropriate solutions for problems faced by local communities. So this is one of the things that Adrian does. Talking about his paper will be on community mapping that has been used by indigenous communities to assert their customary rights over ancestral territories. It's an important process, as we have heard earlier, to document the special knowledge of community in their mental, that is in their mental maps, so that it appears in paper maps and can be shared and presented in the process of negotiation, litigation, and passing down the knowledge to the younger generations, which goes in line with what we have already talked about, as Dr. Paul Quek was talking about. So he talks about the role of GIS or GPS and GIS in community mapping, the accuracy and the quality of the maps that are produced, and as he talks about how that technology can be used in documenting important traditional knowledge in the management of indigenous community conserved areas, what they call ICCAs, indigenous community conserved areas. So thank you, Adrian, for joining us again this afternoon. We appreciate you spending this time with us. So the time is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Rami. Hopefully, everybody is in good health. I thank the organizer for inviting me and providing opportunity for me to share about our work, particularly on community mapping and basically looking at how to use community conserved area as one of the program to actually empower our communities to basically protect their ancestral territories. So let me share my screen for my presentation. Okay. So you can see my All right. So my presentation basically also have a lot of the technical aspect of the community mapping have been presented very well by Mr. Muramat just now. And in fact, a lot of this actually is very similar to what I'm going to use. So I will skip those. So I'm going to focus more on the processes and also the how community have been using community maps as one of the tools to basically document and protect their ancestral domain. So I'm wearing many hats, but today I'm going to represent the Jaringan Orang Asal Indonesia or JOAS and also my organization called Tonibung lah. So to start with, I just want to give a little bit of background of how this community mapping came about, because I think there's a lot of talk about community mapping and how it is being used currently using the digital technology and all this sophisticated technology that have been developed over time. But actually, community mapping has a very a deep history in terms of the indigenous peoples struggle towards recognition of traditional ancestral domain or traditional land, including NCR, customary rights in Sabah and Sarawak. The first time I got to hear about community mapping was, I think, in the late 1990s and early 2000, where we were introduced because the NGOs that time is trying to find ways on how to help our communities, especially in those areas where there's a lot of tension and also conflict within logging companies or expansion of oil palm plantation towards their traditional ancestral domains. So we got some early exposure from actually Canada. The First Nations of Canada actually first used these community maps and have won like very important landmark cases in fighting for their rights, particularly the land against a large construction of large dams. So you can see in the photo, these are some of the examples of how a community map looks like. It's very artistic, very very mystical, because a lot of our maps within the indigenous people community is already here as a form of mental maps. So we just need to transfer those spatial knowledge from our mental maps into paper maps. So what is the process? Because we have technology to do that, but there is very important steps in ensuring that all these mental maps, which is in form of oral history. For example, like if you go to any kampong and said, where's your territory? So they will talk about that hill, that gunung, that batu, that cave there, that sungai, and all these things. But these are just words of mouth, and just stories. So what is the process? Actually, community mapping is a good process to basically georeference. I use the word georeference this oral history into maps that can be shown into to digital maps or paper maps, and similar like what Saudara Maramat already explained, that basically it's not a very difficult process, but it requires how do we capture this knowledge through listening and writing, and then trying to find where is the location of that particular georeference or geomark points lah, which is important, culturally markings of our traditional territories. And the problem with this thing is sometimes it encompasses huge areas. Those days, before we have GIS, before we have GPS, what we have to do was in the 90s, I still followed some of those community mapping where we have to use the measuring tape and compass. It took us months to actually produce one maps, and these are some of the challenges that we faced those days. But we still managed to produce those maps, and a lot of the maps that was used that time was also used for very important cases, as Prof. Rami Bulan did mention about No Anak Nawai, the case where it's one of the most important landmark case that happened in NCR, where no recognition of communal title or communal area, which is pemakai menua and so on. The concepts that is won during No Anak Nawai is so important that it's not just for Sarawak cases, but also for Sabah and even in some extent the Orang Asli cases lah. Yeah, so how the community mapping have been used by indigenous people communities. So I think the most important part is first of all, it started the evolution start from we want to get evidence, just because a lot of our court litigation requires evidence. So the community mapping process actually provides the platform for us to document those evidence, so that it can be a showcase or part of any affidavits or any submissions to the court. So court litigation, I've been involved in many of the court litigation when it comes to NCR in Sabah, and it is not an easy task actually to produce those information, but maps actually help a lot to show where are the conflict area and where are the overlaps. So the judge are much more informed about the context of the conflict. Yeah, and also the community mapping is very important process. I have to emphasize, it's a process. Community map is just not the map, but it's actually the most important part is the process to document the spatial knowledge of the community, which is already in the mental maps, into paper maps. So it has to be able to be captured in terms of interviews, interactions. There's a lot of process that requires to be followed in order for us to capture those special knowledge that can enrich and also make the maps more complete. So it is very important. And by documenting those knowledge is also an important process for transgenerational opportunity for the young generation to get informed in the process. Because a lot of the time, those who are going to write and take notes, or even eventually go and do the survey using the GPS in the territory, is actually the youths. But without the elders telling the story and passing it down to the younger generation, that is not possible. So community mapping, the process, actually allows and provide the platform for intergenerational transfer of knowledge. So this is so important that we have to do the process properly. That's why in the Suhakam process, the inquiry, we emphasize on the process of community coming together, and they have to make sure that at least majority of the community are involved in producing those maps. So in recent years, we have seen a lot of interest on conservation because of climate change, but a lot of things also because of the way we manage our natural resources, especially our biological diversity. So since Malaysia is one of those who signed on the Convention of Biological Diversity, it is important because for indigenous people, because there is a proper provision in the CBD, especially on the Article 8J, which is looking at how community traditional knowledge is recognized, and also that leads towards the ABS, access and benefit sharing. But in the CBD also, there is also important part of the work of CBD is on the program of work on protected areas. So I was involved in the International Indigenous Committee on Biodiversity, who fought for the insertion of ICCA in the convention. So if you look at the program of work on protected areas, we can see that it's recognized as one of the possible or way of encouraging or to do more protected areas. So ICCA can also be recognized as proper protected areas in the national context. Yeah. So because of the CBD, the IUCN, the International Conservation Union, also come up with a framework on OECM, other effective conservation mechanism, OECM. So ICCA also becomes one of these OECMs. So it means that indigenous people communities have very important role as a custodian of all these resources, and they are able to do conservation of areas. So it's not just about how to secure your rights through, I mean, a lot of the things that we have a dilemma in the indigenous community is, in order for you to what they call demand or claim your traditional area, NCR, you have to basically cut the trees and plant it with something, which is changing, because we want to allow also community, if they choose so, that this area should be protected, because they need the resources. They need to go to the forest and collect non-timber forest products. They need to hunt, they need water. So this particular area, ICCS, should be recognized as protected areas, even to be recognized as part of those national protected area programs. And now there's a lot of talk about carbon credit, carbon trading, and so on. So I think this is a big opportunity in the future that indigenous communities, they can basically select some of their pemakai menua or whatever to be ICCA and can be traded as carbon sinks in the future. So these are possibilities that already in our right of front door, but it's just a matter of how the community is actually empowered to use community mapping, digital technology to actually come up with a good management plan for their ICCAs. Yeah, so understanding the area is just one step of how to establish an ICCA. Yeah, so these are some of the examples in Sabah, where a lot of the communities currently surrounding the Crocodile Park have established, currently in the process of establishing their ICCAs. So the concept of ICCA, as I explained, is not new, because a lot of the way of life, for example, in Sabah, the Dusun community, we already practicing conservation. We have the concept of Gompi Guno, use and protect. So if you want to go and collect bamboo shoot or rattan, we have to use it, and then at the same time we have to do something to make sure that the resources is intact. So we have to protect it by doing some cleanup and so on. So the concept of the use and protect is already there. So it's just matter of to get due recognition of this process. For example, in Sabah, we also have the Tagal system. I think in Sarawak, similar Tagang something. But yeah, the idea is it's already part and parcel of our traditional way of life because we have been interacting with our natural resources since time immemorial. Yeah, so we have developed all these systems to protect this traditional these natural resources to our traditional knowledge. So traditionally, we have also adat system. In our native customary law, we have all this. Sometimes we have a codified adat in certain different ethnic groups, and a lot of if you look at it, there is a lot of things that related to managing resources. For example, water, natural resources, and so on. So we have to try and use this adat system as part of the conservation, conservation practices of ICCAs. And community mapping have been used and can be used further to enhance the documentation of these particular areas, and also maybe improve in terms of management plan and so on. So these are some of the example of how we facilitate community mapping in the kampung. Basically, we start with just sketch map. So once we have the sketch map, they present it to the kampung and get feedback, so that the more discussion around the sketch map, the better, the more enriched information the map is. So after that, only then you take your device, which is the GPS, or now with smartphone, then you go map this area. So at least they start in the process of first establishing the outer boundary. And after that, then you go internally where the individual parcel is, because conflict always come out during the partition of parcels. So we should not go to the parcel first. So we have to basically, if possible, do the communal area first, then you go to the parcels to minimize conflicts within the community. So why community mapping is needed? Actually, it's a process. It's a circle that needs to be continuously run. So the most important part is information. So we start with information. You collect information, you go to the field, and then if possible, you mark the boundary, and then we start different to identify the customary, the important to the resources that need to be protected. That is the first process. And then you do the documentation of historical facts, the oral history. These are all need to be in the paper. And actually, the next is to formulate conservation protocol for the particular area that the community wish to establish as ICCA. And then the last one is collecting information from the field and marking the boundary. But the process doesn't end there. It goes back after you produce the draft. It is presented to the community, and again the process continues until the map is basically complete, and from time to time new information is came out. Maybe you can always add this. So with technology like GIS, it allows this continuous process. So it means that it's not like those days where once you have drawn it into the paper map, then you have to discard the whole map, then you have to redraw again in the new draft. But because of multi-layering, different layers of information through the GIS, the system, it allows this continuous process of data enrichment that is going to be used for the community to come up with what they think the best way to manage that particular area. Yeah, so this is one of the example I took. I think this was done in 2003 in Monsok Ulu in Tambunan, where those days we were doing some projects with Sabah Wildlife Department, just to identify where the area that they go hunt in particular. So you can have all those different people giving information. We don't even need to have a paper, just basically twigs and tree, whatever bamboo, whatever strips to represent sungai dan sebagainya. But what is important is you can see people taking notes of what is being discussed, where is the location, and later we try to find where is the exact location of that particular place that was mentioned in the discussion. Yeah, so there is importance of community mapping in to produce the document for rights advocacy, also to involve, we need to involve everybody if possible, and it is also to use to facilitate discussion. So normally the process is we always have 3 focus group discussion. We have the men, the orang bilang kami punya beliau-beliau ini, and then we have the women, and then we have the youths to discuss their the views about the area, and we produce different map. And we have seen they are different in terms of the worldview of men, the worldview of women, and also the youths. Yeah, so the women tend to have very small area but very precise, very detailed maps, while the men have huge area but less details on it. And normally youths will only have particular interests that interest them, like where to get where to go picnic, where to go and get good fish and fishing ground, and so on. So these are some of the community dynamics that needs to be all documented in the process of coming up with a very comprehensive community maps. So the process is important, that in order for us to come up with a comprehensive management plan of the indigenous community conserved area. Yeah, so of course, just like our previous speakers, it is important to have documentation and also to share this, because if we have this and it's only documented and it's kept in the community, it doesn't serve a lot of purpose apart from being a reference. But it is good also to basically publish those reports so that it can be can be recognized as official information of that particular area, and it also to give shed light towards that. I like also the word they use, the digital darkness. So maybe these are some of those things that we can do in the future, where we can publish those documentation in the GIS just by clicking that particular shapefile, and those documentation that relates to that particular area all there, and you can basically get information about how the community has been conserving and what sort of initiative that was done by the community to protect that particular area, river or forest in that area. Yeah. So the role of technology in community mapping, I have to say that GPS technology is one of the most significant development in the recent years, because when I first started to do community mapping, it's all about using compass and tape. It's like the old methods, and it will take you months to do even one long house to map. But with GPS, you can do it within like 1 or 2 days, so long that you have all the mark. You have some idea where those areas you want to go and mark, and you have people who will be able to guide you to go there and take position on that. So these are like really ground survey type. But now we also Google Earth. You can also do shortcuts. You can do desktop mapping. You can just put place marks on top of Google the satellite imagery, and you basically already have maps. And even though I don't recommend those processes, but in some circumstances we might have to do that, mainly because of security reason. I have first-hand experience on community having conflict with a large company, palm oil company, that basically shut the gate, and they also threatened to arrest anyone who going to, they say, encroaching to the area. But how to map if their kuburan nenek moyang mereka is all inside the plantation, right? So we had no choice but to either use drone or to basically just use satellite image to get those GPS point to be marked. Yeah. So technology is so important. It is an enabling component of traditional knowledge, and also can be also important in terms of bridging the generation, because a lot of the old school people still prefer traditional maps. Sometimes needs to be bridged together so that we can have continuity of the information. And I think a lot of the ICCA, the Indigenous Community Conserve Area, have been documented through the use of technology such as GPS and GIS these days. Yeah, and the accuracy of GPS have increased significantly, because I remember the first time I used a GPS, it was a Garmin 12XL, and the accuracy is like 32 meter, and sometimes you have what they call selective availability. Means that you still need to, it is scrambled, basically the signal is scrambled, and we have to do a lot of script to actually make sure that it goes to at least 6 to 8 meters accuracy those days. But now with GPS satellites, and also GLONASS, which is the Russian, now Russian is attacking Ukraine, but yeah, GLONASS and GPS, especially in Asia, the accuracy of our GPS handheld, even our handphone, have increased accuracy dramatically, even to the extent we can get up to like 1 or 2 meter accuracy in very good condition. Yeah. So let me just give some example of how a community have used mapping to basically document their the ICCA, and then get it recognized under the government punya management plan. So this is a community near to the Crocker Range Park. We refer them as Ulu Papar lah, because it's just the Ulu of Sungai Papar. But the most important part is this Kampung Buayan, where a lot of the work have been done here. And in fact, before this project, there was like huge, every year they will have conflict with Sabah Parks, because every year they will start slash and burn, and the Sabah Park Ranger will start coming and start arresting people for burning the land, or trying to prepare their land for tebasan. And this happens every year, and I think comes to a point where Sabah Parks and the community have a very bitter conflict sampai cash police, tarik ugut guna parang and all these things. So we came in and proposed that we should go for collaborative management of this particular area lah. So what we did was the community in Kampung Bayan, that includes Kampung Tiku, they start to document about where are the areas, the land use, what they do, where do they collect. This is just one example of the layer. We have like many layers of first layer, we have all this land use. Second layer, hunting area, resource collection area. Then we presented to Sabah Parks. So when Sabah Parks saw this and how comprehensive the community management on land use is actually available, the knowledge. So in the end, the Sabah Parks have come up with the official management plan of the Cockrange Park, and they include zoning, which is what we call traditional use. Those initially it was called limited traditional use zone, but eventually it was changed into community use zone. And this community use zone until now exists, and because of the establishment of the community use zone, Sabah Parks even declare the whole area as the UNESCO Biosphere Reserve because of establishment of all this community-based conservation, and in fact the policing and management of this whole area is done by community. So the Sabah Parks and community is working hand in hand to actually manage this area from encroachment. There's a lot of people from outside encroaching to look for gaharu, collecting, and then setting bird traps to collect those very elusive and endemic bird species in Borneo. So, and the community have been, responsible to monitor and making sure that these people are not continue to those practice. Anyway, so the whole idea is like the process of documenting the practices of this community that have been staying there for many generations is able to convince the management of Sabah Parks to adopt the community conservation systems, which hence they to recognize ICCA for that area lah. So just for information, we also produce different kind of maps, but these are much more for litigation processes where parcels and very clear boundary need to be marked, even to the very accurate, as accurate as possible. So these are some of those maps that was submitted to courts for NCR litigation. So what are the opportunities? I just want to go through this very fast because my time is getting, I'm running out of time. So I just want to share a little bit of our initiative through Tony Bong, which have been building micro hydro projects. And a lot of this micro hydro is very much reliant on the health of the watershed. So it's very important that any projects that we want to do, the watershed needs to be protected. So it is in the interest of the community to protect the watershed so that the system, the turbine continues to have enough water to run the whole year 24/7. So these are some of those things that we try to use, and we use a lot of community mapping in terms of establishing this watershed area so that the community can continue to enjoy 24-hour electricity from the micro hydro systems that we establish. So in Sabah, we have installed over 30 systems up to date, and we have been using the community micro hydro and the watershed as the major way to funding this area. In fact, a lot of the projects is funded through conservation grants. So we got funding from UNDP Small Grants Program and all those. But the whole idea was the project was funded by conserving those watershed areas lah, as part of a win-win situation for the community and also the funder. So the community wants electricity, but the funder wants the area to be protected. So they have a mutual benefit lah. So every micro watershed is actually protected. The micro hydro is funded through protection of forest reserves, forest watershed. So we have done this over 30 projects, as you can see, the whole of Sabah. These are areas that we have done in Sabah through our micro hydro systems. And I think the benefits of community mapping is it gives all members of the community to participate. It's not just one koto kampung, one tuai rumah, or one MPKK or JPKK, whatever you call it them now, to give all the information, but it allows women, youths, and also the elderly to actually participate and provide input in making the map as what they call diterima semua, is accepted by all, especially also to the adjacent communities, because sometimes the conflict also comes out because of traditional boundary disputes. So community mapping can be used to mediate these disputes lah, and use it so that the conflict can be resolved between the communities. The third part is actually to allow discussion and engagement, meaningful engagement with government agencies such as the parks. For the case of in Ulupapar, the Sabah Parks is very important, and also looking at how to ensure that the forest department and even like wildlife department can recognize ICCAs. At least in Sabah, the Sabah Forest Fisheries Department have really all out to support the Tagal process. I mean, the establishment of the Tagal system, and is considered to be one of the major ICCAs currently implemented in Sabah. And I think with community map, we can use it for better land use and management. And it's not just to determine the ICCA, but in the future, how can the new generation play an important role to look at where are the areas that can be developed and should be protected. So these are very important key aspect of long-term planning. So the challenges, I think this is my last slide. I have to say this, that after my 20 years of experience and facilitating community mapping and trainings, technology can be an enabling part, but it also be very discriminative. This is what I have concluded throughout the years, because if you want to help through technology, to enable them to communicate more effectively, to document this, but it is also very discriminative, because those who have no knowledge about technology tend to be, sidelined. Either there is the very real word called technophobia. Technophobia is very real, and I've seen native communities, the orang asli have technophobia, especially when I was teaching them how to use the GPS. They're like, wow, they're really shaking the hand because they're takut rosak, because they have this impression that technology can be cepat rosak lah, and then they don't want it to be broken. So those are something that needs to be addressed in order for us to have a very effective and meaningful transfer of knowledge. Secondly, technology can only be as good as who is using it for the intended purpose. Sometimes there is technology, but some people misuse technology for their own good. So instead of using technology to facilitate and get rights for everyone, some I don't know what I have to call this kind of very opportunistic people use technology to document all these things and then jual tanah. And I've seen it many times in many communities, and these are very sad part of, and we have to be very careful on how we roll out technology out there. So we have to give it to the right person, because if we don't give it to the right person, it will only go, it will benefit only that person, or in fact, it can be really work against the whole thing. The third part is traditional knowledge is very complex. It is not easy to be documented, not only by technology, but really it requires deep understanding and proper processes. Means that if we really want to document traditional knowledge and the practices of indigenous people, you really have to live it. You have to go there. You have to be a little bit more like an anthropologist to actually do things. So yeah, technology is a good enabling component, but without the deep understanding of why you want to do it and what is the intended result, it will not bear any fruit. In fact, it can have very negative impact to the community, because exposing certain information, sensitive information, can be detrimental to the community. For example, nobody knows there's coal in that particular area, but because of your mapping, you naively put this coal deposit gambar on Facebook. Oh, we have good coal here. The next thing you know, you have all this prospecting company coming to their land, and next thing you know, that the area is already considered to be property of the state. So last but not least, the cost of technology. I think we have to work towards making these things, technology available and also affordable to many indigenous community. And I'm very happy to see that a lot of the open source movement is really stepping up to bridge this gap. But unfortunately, they're only producing or supporting the tech development, but not much is given emphasis on empowering the community to master this technology. So I think this is a gap that we need to really address, so that indigenous community themselves can use technology to document the traditional knowledge. So I think that's all I have for my presentation today. And I hope that if you have any question, you can always contact me and have this contact information. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Adrian. We have really learned a lot listening to you talking about participatory community mapping, involving the communities themselves in recording their resources. I think I appreciate that you're talking about this as being a process. We heard from CDMI just now the whole technical thing about doing it, but there is this other side of it, the process of capturing the knowledge or capturing the special knowledge from the TK holders, or the traditional knowledge holders, are the elders, putting it into a document for transgenerational transmission as well as for management of resources. And I think that's you've also shown to us, as most indigenous peoples know, I think at least in Sarawak we talk about that in order to claim the land, you have to clear the land, otherwise you cannot claim, But things are moving in on the international scene, as you have said, that there is a need to preserve as well. We don't have to be able to only claim because it is cleared, but this is something that is being developed, and the fact that there is this whole move on indigenous conserved areas, I think is something that we perhaps need to understand a little bit more, so that communities can look at the areas as something that they can perhaps co-manage, and that they will be able to conserve. And the way that you have looked at the symbiosis, where we are talking about not only protecting watersheds, but also for providing all these resources like the micro hydro, which is so important for many rural communities. Thank you for sharing that with us. And are there any questions from the floor? And while we're waiting for any questions, I think one of the points that I thought I appreciated, as you said, documenting traditional knowledge can be discriminatory, but it really requires people, it requires empathy, I think, on the part of those who are documenting. In many ways, as you say, being like an anthropologist, being there, understanding what is the meaning of this knowledge for the people that practice it, particularly when we're talking about native law or customary practices on the land. It is so important. Yeah, thank you so much for that. And is there any question from the floor?
No questions at this time, Dr. Rami.
Yeah. Otherwise, I think we've had a very rich afternoon with these very rich papers that we have heard. Very practical wisdom and very practical knowledge, and something that can be used by communities. And it's so I'm happy to note that there are some of my students are here, and lawyers who are dealing with all these issues of rights on the land. Of course, when we talk about the law, as we are at the Center for Legal Pluralism, we talk about the law, we talk about rights, we talk about legal procedures, but technology is just as important part of that. And we've been able to look at that intersection here. One of the other things that as we deal with our students is the various types of knowledge that is available, and traditional knowledge for indigenous peoples is so important. Thank you so much again to the speakers for being with us, and for all of you who remain with us and from the beginning to the end. Thank you so much. And you can perhaps share the link with your friends who want to hear this again. I know there have been some requests, specific requests, that this be recorded because some people could not be with us today.
Prof. Rami, we can take a picture together. Maybe everyone can open their cameras.
Yeah.
Raymond, can you take a picture?
Okay, that would be good. Yeah. Yeah, there are still others. If you are able to put on your camera, it will be very very good to capture you as well.
Okay, Raymond's here.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. If okay. So that's all we will have. So ready? 1, 2, 3. Hang on. Okay. Second shot, just in case the first one didn't work out. 1, oops, sorry, hang on. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you so much, Raymond, for helping us with this, and Dr. Zalina and Dr. Ishadul, and really for all our speakers and those of you who stayed on. Thank you so much.
Welcome, Dr. Rami.
Yeah.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
That ends